Join me right now on Kumite TV is rising featherweight prospect Aalon Cruz. What's going on, Aalon?
Nothing much, man. How you been?
Good, good, man. First question is, what is more difficult, getting interviewed by four beautiful women in bikinis or fighting in a cage?
Probably getting interviewed by women in bikinis. It's when you're in fight mode, you're real comfortable. There's no fear once you're in there. So I think being surrounded by a bunch of hot women would you'd be a little more nervous.
Definitely, definitely. It's something unusual, in the sport because you don't really see that. You always get interviewed by like one person, but then when you got four women standing next to you in bikinis, that's another level.
Yeah, it's another level with a green screen behind you, and you don't really
Yeah.
know what to say.
All right. You started wrestling in high school, probably the toughest sport, growing up as a kid. Were you hooked instantly?
Yeah, man, wrestling was great. I loved it. It was kind of funny because once you get out of school, you kind of dreaded going to practice because you knew you were just gonna die. It was like, oh great, I'm gonna go drill for an hour and I'm gonna run and jump rope for 45 minutes straight. But the only fun part was live wrestling. But you love it. You did everything and suffered through it all just so you could live wrestle and then so that you could wrestle on nights. You had to wrestle off with your teammates for spots. It was really competitive. I think it was all about the competition. The competition, and obviously now knowing that I've gone through wrestling, I learned, how to, be dedicated to what I'm doing, how to have, the hard work and have that grind. You really can't get that type of grind unless you've done wrestling. And I actually think wrestling's still harder than MMA is, to be honest. Like if you're trying to wrestle at a high level, I'd put that over MMA as far as difficulty.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of shows in who's the champion, of each, weight class. Most of them are come
Wrestlers.
from wrestling background. What was the next step, towards mixed martial arts after wrestling?
Yeah. So the reason I started doing martial arts was I was wrestling in high school, and during summers we didn't have a wrestling club to stay in shape. So I told my mom, I was like, "Hey, I was like, can you put me in a martial arts gym? Maybe one of those MMA gyms." Because at that time I had seen Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz fight, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I told her, put me in a gym, and that gym was actually a traditional karate school, but they were transitioning into an MMA school. So I got introduced into kickboxing, submission grappling, and it was pretty cool. And I stuck with it. So I kept doing that and wrestling at the same time. And then once I graduated high school, I just continued on doing martial arts. And then, I got really serious into MMA when I turned 20, and that's when I took my first amateur fight.
That was Tiger Showman's, right? The,
Tiger
the
Showman,
the
that was
gym
my
back in
first
high
gym.
school, right? You see,
Yeah,
those guys now, they're doing their thing, up in the East Coast. So,
yeah.
it's
They're
kind of cool,
they're
right?
up at the main gym in New York with
Yeah.
Master Tiger Showman. So yeah, it was funny because my deshi at the time, and he became a sensei. He was like, yeah, he's like, we'll get you a few amateur kickboxing matches. We'll have you go live up in New York with Master Tiger Schulman, and it all sounded cool. I ended up splitting, parting ways before all that happened, but I still enjoyed my experience there.
I read or I saw that, you're talking about jujitsu was kind of like the next thing you kind of really got deep into. How was that transition, from the jujitsu to the
hmm
MMA?
Yeah, so you know, I've never even been in a street fight to this day. So I just uh, the allure of jujitsu of not having to get punched in the face or kicked or anything like that, but still being able to be somewhat combative with somebody, intrigued me. And I used to do a lot of tournaments. I mean, I would do a tournament every weekend if I had the money, or I would have a sponsor, to pay for it. And so my jujitsu game got really good. And my coach at the time, he was like, you know what, dude? He's like, I was going to college as well, to our community college down the street. He's like, you should just quit college and then just go pro and start fighting. I was like, well, I was like, calm down. I don't even really have a striking game. I was like, I'm only a blue belt. I was like, so I told him, here's the deal. I was 18 years old. I was like, if you can find an amateur fight out of state, I'll fight as a blue belt. I said, but if not, I'll go pro, but only when I get my purple belt. And so that was our deal. And he ended up fighting some fights up in Tennessee and as an amateur. So I fought up there 3 times. and they were all ground and pound, no shin guard. It was basically pro rules. And then I finished out my amateur career down in Florida.
Nice. Now, you've accumulated a 7-2 record as a professional so far. Pretty impressive. But it hasn't been without adversity. Talk about some of the pivotal moments, up to this point that will pay dividends for you moving forward.
Yeah, man. I always tell everybody, like, losses, they're not really losses, they're learning experiences. I don't even say, 7 wins, 2 losses. I say 7 wins and 2 learning experiences, because I learned so much from those losses, like more than I did from wins. There was a big jump. So I was 3-0. This was my first loss. I was 3-0, and I used to not really even warm up in the back. I would sleep the entire time. I'd get up for like 5-10 minutes, move around, just get loose, because I wanted to save my energy. I thought, for the cage. I got in the cage, and the guy that came at me, he was already at 90%, and I was still like 20%. So we went back and forth in that first round, and it got to a point where I felt like my body was just, the lactic acid buildup was crazy, and it felt like I was walking through mud. And he ended up catching me with a submission. So after that fight, I learned that I need to warm up and warm up really good. And so then after that, I beat another guy who was a tough guy. He was 8-2 at the time, and I was 4-1. And I dominated him. After warming up really good in the back. And I also learned something from my next loss after that. So the biggest thing is just like, losses aren't negative. You look at any of the top guys in the UFC, most of them have losses. Aside from, John Jones having the DQ and Khabib, everybody has losses, and I'm sure they've all learned from it. Even Max Holloway. Max Holloway lost Conor McGregor. He fixed whatever he needed to fix, and then, since then, other than Dustin Poirier, he's been on a tear, killing everybody.
Yeah, even, John Jones and Khabib, I think that they have a couple fights on their record that are wins, but, they went to the judges and they were close fights. They could have been
Very
losses
close.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very close.
Now, you're heading to Vegas soon to face Steven Nguyen. He's an undefeated guy. He has built a name for himself in the Midwest. Watching some of his film, what are your thoughts on his skill set?
Man, he's pretty well rounded. Obviously, he's 6-0 for a reason. He's undefeated. He's got a few. I think my record. I feel like I've fought some tougher guys than he has. Not taking away from anybody that he's fought, but like I say, he's pretty well rounded. I know my ground game is better. I know my striking's better, and I know my wrestling's better. And I guess he's gonna have to know those things, right? But I'm also gonna. I always assume that I'm gonna fight the best version of Steven Nguyen that night, right? So I'm gonna assume he's patched up those holes. He's improved his wrestling. He's improved the jiu-jitsu. He's improved his striking. And I think he seems to be primarily a striker. I don't really notice him initiate too many takedowns. I mean, he's down to go to the ground, but most of the time it's his opponent grabbing him, and then he'll counter wrestle, and then he'll end up on top, or the case may be. I notice he likes to hunt guillotine sometimes. He's got good gas, when someone's exhausted or he's exhausted too. He's got a good push to it. So I think it's going to be a good fight. We're a good matchup. We're both about the same height. I'm 6 foot. He's 5'11". We're both tall and lanky, and I'm just excited. Like I want to go out there and really prove to Dana that I belong in the UFC, and prove to myself that that's where I belong.
Yeah, it seems like the next generation of featherweights are all tall, lanky guys.
Yeah.
Compared to
Yeah.
like a Chad Mendez, or that's like there's no more of that, right?
No, that's what I've been noticing is a lot of, like you said, a lot of 45. I would tell my friends too. They're like, most of the time when I was coming up, I was fighting short, stocky guys, like wrestlers and whatnot. But I fought dudes that are just as tall as me. Josh Millwood, he was 5'11". Steve Garcia was 5'11". I think that's about it, really. 5'9", 5'10". Doesn't really make a difference. But I think for fighting, just a long, lanky frame works well. Obviously for striking, we have good leverage. But, I mean, there are also studs that are short and stocky. I mean, look at Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar's still a killer, and he's like 5'4". But, I mean, he's a beast. But then Max Holloway's the champ, and he's tall and lanky. So, and John Jones, for his weight class, he's tall and lanky. So, I don't know. I just think the sport is leaning more towards strikers with good takedown defense and good submission defense, as opposed to, maybe just really good wrestlers. But then you have to have a wrestling background. I don't know. It's kind of hard. It's styles make fights. It's always styles make fights. So it's hard to really pinpoint what dominates, other than wrestling, I guess, for the most part.
All right. So the next thing, are you the type of guy, are you the type of fighter that trains for the opponent, or do you mainly focus on yourself during training camp?
Honestly, a little bit of both. In my mind, I'm always training for whoever's the current champion. So Max Holloway is my opponent. But that's not to say I don't overlook my opponent. So I've definitely watched his video. I've seen some things that he does, just get a general sense of what his type of game is. And then my coach watches his video and kind of like goes into a little more in depth and lets me know what we need to work on. Because I don't want to watch too much video, because in the past I get so sucked into watching everything and just like it kind of freaks me out. And then if like I go in the fight and I assume he's going to do something and he doesn't do it, then I might freak out in that moment. So what I do now is I watch the video in the very beginning when I find out who it is, and then I just don't watch anything, maybe a little bit here or there, but for the whole camp, I really don't watch anything. Then as the fight gets closer, I'll rewatch some of the fights just to get a refresher. And then from there, I just, the entire camp, I'm always trying to learn. I'm just trying to, fix my, sharpen my tools and fix my holes that I have. Because, one, I just like to learn. And then two, you have to fix your holes, because when you get to the UFC, there's no time to really build on your skills. Everybody's already good at everything, or they're exceptional at something. So when I get to the UFC, I want to be a polished product. I'm 29 years old. I'm about to turn 30 this year. So when I get into the UFC, I can't have holes in my game, and get kicked out and then fight my way back up. It's too late. Like I have to be ready to go and have all my X's crossed, so that when I'm there, I stay there for a long time.
Who are the coaches around you that have molded you into the fighter that you are today?
And my head coach, Dana Hurtado, he's my head striking coach. I've been with him since my second amateur fight, all the way to pro. And he's definitely, helped me learn how to use my range a lot. It takes a lot of time for people to it takes a lot of time for people to learn how to use the range with long and lanky. And he's really like pulled that out of me. And just on the mental aspect too, he's got me in that mindset where like, can you curse on the show?
Yeah, yeah.
Just like fuck everybody else and go out there and kill. Like before, because like mentally I was never like that. I'm never like that, but he gets me in that mindset where I'm just like fuck it, like fuck this dude, fuck everybody else. I can whoop anybody's ass. And then I've also got my wrestling coach, Mahmoud Goma. He wrestled for the Egyptian world team. And man, Mahmoud is just like, he's the funniest, goofiest person I know. Maybe it's like an Egyptian thing, but he's also a monster. When I wrestle other people, I can toss them around and I feel great and whatnot. But when he comes out to wrestle with me, he's tossing me left and right. And it's almost defeating sometimes. When he wants to wrestle with me, I'm like, why? Like, what am I going to do? And then I also have my jiu-jitsu coach, Joey Best, at Ybor City Jiu-Jitsu Club. He's a black belt, and he's a small guy. Like, he's probably 145 pounds. And those are the guys that have really good technique, because they can't out-muscle people. They're going with bigger guys all the time. So everything he does is super technical, which I love, because I don't want to waste energy or have to big man things, which I can do. I can big man things, but I'd rather just be very technical, have the correct technique. He's always learning new things that are coming out. He wants to try out new stuff. He's not just stuck in one set way. And he's just really down to earth, And I just picked up a strength coach as well, Frederick Sadler, at my CrossFit gym, the athletic studio. And we just kind of working on, I've never really touched weights really at all, like my entire career. So now we're not even really like lifting heavy or anything like that. Just more so evening my body out, just stabilizing things, working on things that like maybe one side of my core is not as strong as the other side. So I feel so much more stable this camp and a little stronger, but not like I'm not bulking up, like I can't be putting on 10 extra pounds or something, because that would make the weight cut extremely hard.
Definitely, man. Well, outside of your coaches, you have, your mother, man. She seems like she's your biggest supporter from day one. A lot of
Yes.
mothers wouldn't support from day one. They'd be kind of like, hey, you want to get this fighting thing. I don't know about this, but
Yeah.
how, big of an impact has she had on your career?
Man, she is my biggest supporter. Also my girlfriend as well. But my mom, she just, I mean, since I was a kid, she's always whatever I wanted to do. She was like, yeah, okay, 100%. Like, let's do it. Like, she was never like, are you sure you want to do that? Like, from a young kid, I've always been playing. I played soccer, I played street hockey, basketball, baseball, flag football, you name it. I played like 6 different sports at the same time. And, even when I wanted to start skateboarding, I wanted to be a skater. My mom was like, okay, cool. She bought me my first board, and like she would take me to the skate park in Tampa when I need to drive out there with my friends. Like she was always supporting me in whatever I wanted to do. So when I wanted to do wrestling, she was like, oh, cool. All right. So then I joined wrestling. She was helping me out. She would help me with my meals, eating food. I mean, half the time it was going to Evo's after a workout, eating there every day. But yeah, when I wanted to start doing martial arts, she's like, all right. So she found a gym, and then for a while we were paying. It was a good amount of money there, But we worked out so that this was a funny story. I used to wear these Tiger Schulman's used to have a tiger suit. So like at the mall, the tiger would be out there, and we'd be there with another girl, and she'd be giving out free classes, and I was in a tiger suit saying hello to the kids and whatnot. And that's what I did to pay for my sparring gear. So, you know, so then my mom didn't have to, and then I was able to pay my own monthly dues for free after that because I was doing this. So then my mom didn't have to worry about it. But she's always been my number one supporter. Anything I need, if I'm a little low on money, she'll help me out. If I needed a place to crash right now, she would totally let me come live at her house. It's always an open door with her, and yeah, I mean, I love her, and I just want to take care of her in the future. That's definitely a big part of my plan.
You go to Vegas, you get the win impressively. Dana gives you that contract. What separates you from the rest of the pack in the featherweight division?
Well, for one, most of them aren't tall and lanky, so a lot of them are short and stocky, and they're not going to have a good time trying to shoot in on me. But I love to wrestle, so it's okay. I just think that I'm a smarter fighter. I know how to keep my distance very well, which if you notice, Max Holloway is very good at keeping his distance, and I think I'm very good at that as well. If the fight should go on to a 3-round fight, or if it should go through later rounds, whatever the case may be, I'm willing to go to that dark place. I'm willing to take it to places that they're not willing to go, or push the pace. Even if I'm exhausted, because I always focus on this in training. Even if I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and my muscles are burning, and I'm breathing heavy, I'm always trying to push the pace. I'm just trying to. I don't care if it's sloppy and I'm ripping my arms over, because if I hear and I know they're tired, then I know I just need to keep pushing, keep going, because I know they're more tired than I am, as long as I'm on top. And I just don't. I don't. It's not sure. Not everybody has that instilled in them, and it might be from wrestling. Maybe I don't know, or maybe it's just growing up in a small town. Doing yard work every weekend, and being around horses, and all that stuff. I remember my mom and my grandma every Saturday and Sunday. It was yard work. I used to hate weekends because they make me go outside, pull weeds. We were cutting down trees, planting new plants, digging ditches, like just basic farm boy stuff. And I mean, I definitely think it made me better mentally, probably physically too. Just growing up in that environment. My mom's like, she's a hard worker as well. Everybody in my family's a hard worker. They're all hard headed as well. But so I think I get that from them.
All right, man. July 30th, Dana White's Contender Series, Las Vegas. Alon, thank you so much for your time, and good luck on everything and all the stuff that's in your future.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.